Unfortunately, we have to talk a little bit more Texas before we go to the post game. Though, just to talk about this case here, this death row case, Texas still maintains the brutal position of maintaining the death penalty, and the state has been set to execute a man, Robert Robertson, for a devastating event back in 2002, but he was convicted on what is called shaken baby syndrome. And Matt, I don't know if you remember that from when we were younger, but that was a kind of like newer science that was supposed to sort of indicate and be able to recognize abuse leading to the death of children. But it turns out that the science around that has been pretty thoroughly debunked, and it's regarded by many experts to now be what they call "quote unquote" junk science. And I don't know if that's just a Texas term or not, but we have rules here about junk science convictions, and the importance of having those things being reviewed. Right, if there is science that was used to convict somebody. That is something that should be reviewed and taken very seriously, frankly, in any circumstances, but most importantly, in a death penalty case.
I mean, these sorts of forensic type of sciences are open to provision, and there are many types of things to do with, say, audio
Hmm.
that are very open to interpretation or whatever. So, like, these laws are very important, and people in this country have been locked up unjustly because of false, like you say, junk science.
Hmm. And in this case, again, this is a tragic, story. This, a young kid dies. Um, but Robert Robertson also has autism, and a pretty debilitating form of that, at least when it comes to his communication. And one of the things that was utilized in addition, to the shaken baby syndrome, one of like the main focuses of the case was that he didn't sort of seem remorseful enough, or wasn't acting quote unquote typical. And again, this is just a really difficult situation, and one where there has been a lot of conversation from scientists who have been saying that this conviction over the shaken baby syndrome, doesn't seem to be accurate, including, one of the main jurors on the case, who's come out and said, what they were told and talked about was shaken baby syndrome. And that was what the evidence was, and that is now, a process that is severely in question. And the thing with the death penalty, one of the many reasons, among others, to uh, be against it, is that it's irreversible. And right now, there is a very high stakes limbo going on with this case. So Robertson was scheduled to be executed last week, and it was down to the wire, the execution, because Governor Greg Abbott, who we'll get to in a second, is the person who has the ability to pardon this person, and has refused to do so. So the Texas legislature, and Matt, you know who runs the Texas legislature?
Tell me.
It's Republicans. The Texas legislature has taken special interest in this case because it is so egregious, and it shows that there are fundamental problems with how we handle these systems in Texas. So the Republican legislature, right? Let's just be very clear who we're talking about here, has ordered a subpoena for Robert Robertson, to compel him to come and testify before the Texas legislature, which that was found at the last minute by Texas courts, to be good enough for a stay for him to come and testify before the legislature. The reasoning literally was, well, he can't come and testify if he's dead. So that move by the legislature has sort of created this limbo here around the Robertson case.
Is there much to expect from the testimony, or is it basically just to extend the time?
The hope is to extend the time, as far as I can tell. There, and I mean, Jeff Leach, who people who watch this program follow Texas politics. This guy, this guy's a character I've been massively critical about for many bills. This is, very, very conservative Republican, has said to the effect that part of the reason they want to testify is not only to sort of open this up, but also to sort of look at what has gone wrong. Literally talking to somebody in this experience so that the legislature can try to act to stop this. Um, which is something. And I mean, I could talk, give you a breakdown of what's next and some of the Abbott stuff, unless you had anything that you wanted to sort of note on that.
Well, I guess like it is like sort of the unexpected part of the story is the principal, and you mentioned I don't know if I'm spoiling anything, but
Oh,
Dr. Phil making an
no.
appearance too, and I think of him as a big psycho, and to find out that he's on the right side of things, it's a little bit disorienting.
Yeah, and I'm not certain too much about the Dr. Phil connection, but he seems to be fairly involved now in Texas around death penalty, cases. And as people probably know, Texas is pretty egregious when it comes to killing people in the name of the state. Um, and this is just like the more and more that you hear about the case, the more and more clear that it is that there is undoubtedly something very, very wrong with this science being utilized um, to sentence this man to death. Adding to the tragedy of this young child's death 22 years ago is the fact that this person has been in prison, very likely wrongfully incarcerated, and now the state looming a death sentence over this person's head. I wanted to just notice a couple. I mean, we'll be watching this. The hope would be maybe the Supreme Court gets involved. They've signaled no, and more and more. Of the hope is just sort of on Greg Abbott. Well, behind the scenes stories here have been a little rough. The Office of the Attorney General, y'all all know that good boy, who is a squeaky clean individual, said this is from Houston Chronicle that the move may quote have created an end around any criminal laws. This is about Texas legislature subpoenaing. Issuing that subpoena for Robertson. The argument from Ken Paxton, which is incredibly rich. If you remember that this is somebody who faced impeachment trial for egregious abuse of public office, sitting here saying that these folks in the legislature trying to understand how somebody who is being potentially set up for death by the state, investigating as to why that is happening and what systems failed him. It created an end around any criminal laws. It's just such an egregious thing to say. That the legislature is just going to be personally involved in sort of getting their friends out of jail. And it's especially rich coming from somebody again like Ken Paxton, who is using our public legal system, right? Using our office of the Attorney General to benefit his real estate buddies.
Mm.
Um, the Supreme Court of Texas did issue that temporary restraining order to delay the death. And now there's going to be a lot of legal challenges about about the subpoena. But I wanted to end on this, and that's Greg Abbott, Governor Greg Abbott, whose personal general counsel has submitted an argument that the Texas House Committee has quote overstepped its legal jurisdiction with the subpoena of Robertson, and that's from the Texan reporting here. Um, I want to remind people of a story from this state and from this governor that we covered on this program, and a lot of people may remember, which is when Garrett Foster, a U.S. Air Force vet who was attending a Black Lives Matter protest, was walking with his partner and a large group of people when a madman who had been tweeting about how he might be interested in harming protesters and killing protesters drove his vehicle into that group of people, right? Used his vehicle as a weapon against these people. And when Garrett Foster invoked his right as a Texan and as an American to defend his folks, was shot clean dead by Daniel Perry. Daniel Perry faced justice and the Texas legal system, and a jury of his peers said, "You are guilty." And Greg Abbott very publicly got involved in that case, very publicly, very seriously got involved in that case to make a message absolutely clear to right wing lunatics in this state that if you kill the right kind of person, the state of Texas will have your back and protect you. And now we're seeing that same person here We're seeing that same person here talk about protecting the separation of powers in Texas government, which is exceptionally rich. If you've been following any of my writing about Greg Abbott over the past 4 years, when this is somebody who has invoked, captured, and grabbed more power and centralized more power in the office of the governor, which is a constitutionally weak governor position in the state of Texas. And he has created all these new powers, including doing things like invoking a disaster declaration over COVID-19 to mobilize millions upon millions and millions of dollars to do his border stunts. This guy's really sitting here talking about, separation of powers and how the legislature needs to respect its authority. Unfucking believable, the gall of these people to talk the way that they do. When what Greg Abbott is more serious about anything here is he doesn't want to look weak and he doesn't want to seem soft to the psycho right wingers who he has emboldened all across this state.
I forgot that he pardoned that guy.
Yeah,
That's
so
Jesus Christ.
like that's not even a question about fault there. That's just, hey, that's okay if you want to kill left-wing protesters here. And here we are in a state that has junk science laws and all these kind of provisions to protect against the very thing that we're seeing right now. Greg Abbott's like, I'm not going to touch that. Uninterested in touching that. Evil, evil stuff here. Well, folks, if you want to support the program, help us cover these kind of things, help us cover these kind of stories. I mean, we had it all today. Talked Donald Trump fry meltdown. We talked a daycare, motherhood, whether or not the left has a problem with that, and about the difficult reality of death penalty politics in the state of Texas. You're not going to get these kind of conversations many other places. So please consider supporting us at patreon.com/leftreckoning. But we're not just asking for a handout. You get 2-to-1 content. You get the main show. You get the post game immediately after these programs. Matt and I take y'all's questions, watch some videos. We got some juicy stuff in this post game, actually. And you also get those Sunday bonus episodes. This last Sunday, we went deep into Ta-Nehisi Coates' revelations about Israel. And also looked deeply at one of his critics, the much beloved Tim Pool. You're getting all this every week. You're getting deep dives into history, theory, politics, all this stuff at patreon.com/leftreckoning. So please consider signing up if you haven't already.